Welcome to the world of polygons. Well, in particular, quadrilaterals and triangles. You may recall that a polygon with 5 sides is called a pentagon, 6 sides is called a hexagon, etc., etc., etc. So let's look at this family tree for some polygons. And we're going to focus on triangles and quadrilaterals. So if a polygon has 3 sides, it's a triangle, and it could be isosceles. Let's remind ourselves of what an isosceles triangle is. It means that it has congruent sides and base angles are congruent. Scalene means no congruent sides. Equilateral, all 3 sides are congruent, all 3 angles are congruent, and in particular angle measures of 60 degrees. Also a reminder, if a polygon is both equilateral and equiangular, it is called regular. Okay, now to quadrilaterals. Quadrilateral can be a parallelogram. So let's just choose a different color for that. Parallelogram. It can be a trapezoid. Trapezoid means exactly one pair of parallel sides. So here we go. We have one pair of parallel sides, and the parallel sides are called bases. The other 2 sides are called legs. Kite. Kite, you have, look at a kite as what the kite you might see flying in the sky. So consecutive sides are congruent, but opposite sides, opposite side means these 2 opposite sides are not congruent. Back to the world of parallelograms. In parallelograms, which are 4-sided, of course, it could be, a parallelogram could be a rectangle. So a rectangle is a parallelogram with right angles. And just an aside, opposite sides of a rectangle are congruent. Rhombus, unlike a rectangle, it doesn't have to have right angles, or it doesn't have right angles, and all the sides are congruent. And actually, another freebie here, opposite angles are congruent. Square. When you look at square, you've sort of got dashed lines coming both from the rectangle and the rhombus, which means that a square has the properties of a rectangle as well as a rhombus. Therefore, a square has 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides, equilateral, equiangular. It is a regular quadrilateral. Okay. Sometimes you may be asked questions as to is a parallelogram sometimes, always, or never a rectangle? So your choices are sometimes, always, or never. And you look at the parallelogram and then you go down these 2 branches and you say, yeah, it could sometimes be a rectangle, or even going down one more level, it could sometimes be a square. Now what if you're asked the question, is a rectangle always a parallelogram? So this time you have to go up the tree branch, and when you go from top to bottom, that means that the rectangle will have always be a parallelogram. So when you go from bottom to top, I don't know whether I said that wrong in the previous sentence, but it should be from bottom to top. If you go from bottom to top, then the quadrilateral has all the properties always of whatever's above. So rhombus is always a parallelogram, a rectangle is always a parallelogram, a square is always a rectangle, and a square is always a rhombus. A rhombus may sometimes be a square, a rectangle may sometimes be a square. So when do we have the answer? Never. If you were asked the question, is a quadrilateral always a trapezoid, you would say sometimes because you're coming down. But if you were asked, is a parallelogram sometimes, always, or never a trapezoid, the answer is never, because they are at the same level. So which means they are mutually exclusive. You might need to listen to this a couple of times to really internalize it. I recommend that you do that. What we're going to focus on is now parallelograms that are, and which means they could be rectangles, rhombi, which is the plural of rhombus, and squares. Okay, here we are just reiterating the rectangle has 4 right angles, square has 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles, rhombus has only 4 congruent sides. And a quadrilateral is a rhombus if and only if it has 4 congruent sides. A parallelogram is a rhombus if and only if its diagonals are perpendicular. And since a square is also a rhombus, so that means a square's rectangles always intersect at right angles too. Another corollary is a parallelogram is a rhombus if and only if each diagonal bisects a pair of opposite angles. And since a square is a rhombus, it would be true for a square also. Rectangle corollary. Quadrilateral is a rectangle if and only if it has 4 right angles. Well, it sort of is obvious actually. A parallelogram is rectangle if and only if its diagonals are congruent. Okay, so let's fix this. Diagonals are congruent. The diagonals bisect each other. So let's fix that. And diagonals are congruent means I want you to see the yellow diagonal and that diagonal are congruent, and they bisect each other. Actually, so all these 4 are congruent. This is just schematic in a sort of set notation. what we're saying here is that a square has the properties of both a rhombus and a rectangle, and rhombus has 4 congruent sides, rectangle has 4 right angles, and square has both. Okay. I am not seeing any particular issues with these problems. So why don't you go ahead and try these problems and answer the questions. Good luck.